Arroyo Grande residents deserve an honest discussion about the proposed cannabis tax initiative. City leaders are unanimous in their support of allowing cannabis businesses in town. And now they want residents to affirm that position with a ballot measure. Why? Because they say it could generate up to $500,000 a year in tax revenue. Now, the city's formal memo actually projects $460,000, but the figure pitched publicly has been closer to $500,000. We'll come back to why even that number is misleading. City staff has made sure we understand what's at stake. Without money, potholes may sit longer. Emergency response times could slip. City services could face delays. Slower than what? Slower than the 9 years this sidewalk near the hospital has been busted up? Slower than the 2 years these Grand Canyon-sized trenches have been on Farrell Avenue? Slower than the potholes they only half-heartedly fill? So is the $500,000 really enough of a gap to make a difference? Let's look at the numbers. The city's own market analysis prepared by HDL companies projects a 6% cannabis tax would generate $324,000 and some change per year. That's not $500,000. The total only climbs to $460,000 when the measure folds in regular sales tax, Measure O's half-cent sales tax, and Measure E's 1 cent sales tax. In other words, a meaningful share of the cannabis revenue being pitched to voters is actually Measure E money, the very tax residents already approved. Measure E is projected to bring in roughly $6 million a year, and that's money largely allocated to street repairs. So when the city implies that potholes will go unfilled and emergency services may suffer without cannabis, you need to hear that clearly. That's a misrepresentation. The actual new revenue here, the cannabis tax itself, is only about 5% of what Measure E alone is expected to generate. That's a drop in the bucket. To dangle slower emergency response times over such a small amount is not a serious budget argument. So my problem is that the city's delving into a heavy-handed sales tactic, and I don't like it, and I don't think you should either. Now, the second issue is, if you read the city staff report carefully, the disadvantages section lists the usual concerns: effects on youth, law enforcement, and other things, all worthy of consideration. But here's what I find interesting. What it does not list anywhere is impact on existing local businesses. The consultant's market analysis walks through revenue projections, retail density, tax rates, and recommended locations along Grand Avenue and the commercial district on Highway 101. I don't have to point out to you that those are areas with existing tenants, existing businesses, people who have been a part of Arroyo Grande for years. And neither document, not the staff memo nor the consultant report, asks what happens to them. Not one paragraph on commercial rent pressure, not one line on tenant displacement, no examination of what occurred in Grover Beach when cannabis retailers moved in. And here's something else worth noting. The staff report documents who the city consulted: police departments in 3 neighboring cities, a tax consultant from Brea, residents through an online survey, but nowhere, not once, does it report that it showed any kind of outreach to the South County Chambers of Commerce, to local business owners, or to the commercial tenants who would be most directly affected, or worse, forced to move out. The people who would actually live with this decision were never at the table. Now, while the staff memo frames it neatly, cannabis, it says, would encourage private investment in underutilized areas. So now who's going to decide those underutilized areas? Is that going to be the businesses currently operating them? No. When cannabis arrived in Grover Beach, some landlords raised rents, some businesses got squeezed, and some had to move. Some closed. That is a real cost, and it's missing from this entire conversation. This really isn't a debate about cannabis. I don't really care about cannabis. I care about how this city is building its case and what it's telling residents why it needs to get done. It's choosing what to highlight, and it's choosing what to ignore. And I think it's important that we pay attention to the things that it's ignoring. Council members have indicated they support bringing cannabis to town, even as their own consultant acknowledges Arroyo Grande retailers would most likely only capture sales away from Grover Beach. So we're not generating any new business for the region. If city leaders want this revenue, make the case honestly, warts and all. Now, I have a real problem when the city is telling residents that potholes will stay longer or emergency services will suffer unless we approve a new revenue source whose headline number leans on the very taxes voters already passed. So here's my take. Get the full picture before you mark a ballot. Ask the council the hard questions about AG business tenants, and don't let the pothole talk do the thinking for you.